Good evening. We will talk about the article Anxiety as it pertains to EFL writing ability and performance by Mohamed Ali Salmani Nodoshan. Introduction. In this presentation, we'll follow the following topics respectively: acronyms, the paper's introduction, background, method, participants, instruments, procedure, results, discussing about state anxiety, conclusion, recommendations, references, contacts, and activity. I'm going to talk about the first half, Gabriel the second half, and we will both go over the activity. Acronyms. The acronyms we'll see of the are EFL means English as a foreign language. FLCAS means Foreign Language Classroom Anxiety Scale. OPT means Oxford Placement Test. And FLLs means Foreign Language Learners. The paper's introduction. In this paper, the author will focus on addressing anxiety about EFL English as a foreign language in the Iranian context, noting that many authors seek to know if anxiety is debilitative or facilitative for language learning, but few studies speak about it in this context. Therefore, this study focuses on two major issues: A. The impact of anxiety on Iranian AFL learners' argumentative writing performance, and B. The relationship between anxiety and foreign language writing ability. Background. In the background, the author comments on several authors and studies about anxiety and FLCAS, Foreign Language Classroom Anxiety Scale. Let's talk about each one, summarizing a little bit. Papa Mihiel defined the anxiety as threats to self-efficacy and appraisals of situations as threatening. Anxiety to refer to the feeling of lack of comfort that arises from something that is threatening. Every individual is vulnerable to anxiety, but in some people it becomes very serious to the point that it's considered a form of psychological abnormality. The term anxiety disorder is often used generically to cover many different forms of abnormal and pathological fear. However, these people can experience a variety of emotions from nervousness to outright panic. Gather, Mayo, and Getz agreed that anxiety disorders can be classified into two groups: A. Continuous symptoms, and B. Episodic symptoms. Whether a person shows continuous or episodic symptoms is a matter of the severity of the anxiety. These symptoms may fall into any of four groups of symptoms: 1. Physical, 2. Emotional, 3. Cognitive, and 4. Behavioral symptoms. Difference between fear and anxiety. Fear, type of emotion that people show in response to a situation in which they perceive some kind of threat. It can almost always be avoided. It's usually, if not always, temporary and transitory, and moreover, it is felt when a threat is present. It temporarily belongs to the here and now. Anxiety, type of mood that can occur without any tangible stimulus. It is almost always inevitable. It's usually durable and lasts a long time, and in addition, it belongs to some diffuse future threat. So we can see that they are very different and we shouldn't be confused. Next, the author talks about three main classes of anxiety that have been suggested. Trait anxiety, it has to do with the individual's personality and is usually stable. They are often anxious and nervous. You tend to be anxious and irritable in virtually every situation. State anxiety, transitory emotional condition in which the individual shows fear of a specific activity or situation and is often accompanied by behavioral symptoms such as restlessness. Situation specific or situational anxiety, like trait anxiety, the main difference between the two is that situational anxiety relates to only a specific situation. It's not stable in different situations and or contexts. Nudoshan also comments that attempts to classify anxiety into different classes result in the emergence of various taxonomies. And in this, he introduces us to another series of authors with their own classifications of foreign language classroom anxiety, FLCA, where we should highlight that Orid et al. Claimed that FLCA is the function of three elements. A. Communication apprehension, where the individual is afraid to communicate and is usually accompanied by shyness. B. Test anxiety, where it originates from a concern and dread about test performance, interfering with learning. And C, fear of negative evaluation, where the individual is afraid of being negatively evaluated by others. Below, the author shows us a summary of some research projects that focus on the FLCA, the correlation between learning sex and the degree of LCA they experience, the correlation between learners' age and their degree of FLCA, the impact of personality traits on FLCA, and the effects of learners' negative self perception on the groups of one. Several other people have studied FLCA, but few of them have conducted their studies on this topic in Iran. Therefore, as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, his study aims to address the Iranian context. So, method participants. The study was conducted with the collaboration of 137 adult EFL students randomly selected from a university in area. Of these students, 76 were women and 61 were men. The average age of female students was 92.2 years old, and that of male students was 90.9 years old. Instruments. The study had two independent variables, anxiety and proficiency, and one dependent variable, writing task performance. So, according to the author, three instruments were used. The first instrument used in the study was the Harvard's Foreign Language Classroom Anxiety Scale, FLCAS, whose questionnaire was applied to the sample to measure the level and type of anxiety of the participants. That done, they performed a Chromebacks alpha to test the reliability and make the necessary modifications until it gave a result high enough to be used. A Verimax rotation model was also used to analyze the principal components and the KMO, Kaiser-Meyer-Oaking, and the Bartlett test showed that the data set was suitable for carrying out the factor analysis. Thus, the Oxford Placement Test, OPT, was administered to the sample to measure the level of proficiency of individuals in English, and a writing assignment where students had to write an essay in 40 minutes to argue on a sensitive political topic, asked to tell the reader, without an specialist knowledge on the subject, to what extent they agree or disagree with the opinion described on topic and why, using your own knowledge, ideas, and experience to support their arguments, provide examples and evidence that are relevant. Finally, two professors with more than 15 years of teaching experience EFL writing course used the multiply trait scoring rubric to assign scores to the participants' writing performance. The score sets were then totaled, calculated, and correlated with the OPT scores. The result, using Pearson's product moment correlation, one-tailed, resulted in a very good validity index for the writing task. Now I'm going to give the floor to Gabriel.
First off, the procedure. Uh, the participants of the research the students tested were assured all results would remain confidential. FLCAS and OPT tests were administered in one session, and writing tasks administered after 2 weeks. So the FLCAS and OPT tests to check their anxiety scales and level of proficiency in English were administered all in one session, and only after 2 weeks the writing task was administered by the author of the research and the teachers he invited. Uh, in all tests, the students were always assured that all results would remain confidential. The author is very emphatic on this to generate no level of anxiety in these students. And Their performance on FLCAS was used for each anxiety type to calculate each anxiety type. Auto scores then were used as data for statistical analysis. For the results of the research, we will analyze the data in the two aims. For aim 1, to show the possible impact of anxiety on Iranian EFL learners' argumentative writing test performance, the variance on their performance is explained by. So, uh, what the researcher found out here is that the variance on their writing performance is mostly explained by proficiency, which is 89.5%. The vast majority of the variance on the students' notes is because of their levels of English proficiency. But we have situational anxiety, trait anxiety, and state anxiety. The factors not known are factors that the researcher was not aware of, and they don't really matter that much. But you can see that on the three anxieties, state anxiety is negative. That is because state anxiety was the only one variance that was debilitative, which means that their performance because of state anxiety was worse. State anxiety worsened their performances. As for proficiency, situation anxiety, and trait anxiety, they all helped their performances. Their performances were better because of these three, also because of not known. For the results of N2, to delineate the relation between anxiety and Iranian EFL learners' foreign language writing ability, we have a chart coordinating the relation between anxieties, their relation with anxiety performance, and how it changed when it was controlled for language proficiency. So, first we have situation anxiety with a negative relationship, which means that the higher the situation anxiety levels, the lower was the writing performance level, which is a negative relationship. Our anxieties had a negative relationship with writing performance. So, the higher the level of anxiety, the lower is the writing performance. But only state anxiety, when controlled for language proficiency, changed into a slight positive behavior, which means that the higher the state anxiety and the higher their language proficiency, the better their performance was. But it was still a very, very shy positive behavior. The others did not have a statistically significant change, which means that they stayed negative. For the discussion, the author discusses what was expected of each anxiety type. For trait anxiety, the nature of these anxieties to be stable, meaning the student with trait anxiety would perceive all tasks with the same level of threat. Therefore, it was expected to not be a main factor of variance, which it wasn't. So, as the student with trait anxiety, as all students with trait anxiety, will view any task with the same level of threat, uh, a lot of variance on it was not expected. And the author says this expectance was proved true by the results. And in situational anxiety, the author created a safe atmosphere in which the students knew it wasn't a natural test, nor were they in any danger of being exposed. It wasn't expected to be a main factor of variance and wasn't. So, with this, the author says that he always tried to create a safe atmosphere. He emphasized that the results would not be Uh, the results will not be divulged in any way with their names. The students will not be exposed. He also says that the students already knew him. He was familiar with the students, and so they knew they weren't in any trouble or anything of the like to trigger this type of anxiety. Now, about state anxiety. This type of anxiety was purposefully expected to be negative, and the author intentionally tried to cause it by establishing a time limit and a heavy writing topic. The writing topic was intentionally alarming, being a judgmental and emotionally heavy topic in Iran. People are judged or resented by the position they take on it, as said the author. It is important to note that the students use discursive strategies to self-center themselves, meaning they would use passive voice, mitigating strategies, and model auxiliaries to muffle their argumentation, always trying to work around the harder parts of the task. So the author says that because of the state anxiety and the nature of this kind of anxiety, and what happened with the writing topic is that the students would use writing strategies as passive voice and model auxiliaries, trying to uh, say their opinion but hiding it, trying to muffle it, as the writer, as the author wrote. In the conclusion, the author concludes that state anxiety is the most debilitative type of anxiety for EFL learners. What he says is that learners with state anxiety in the classroom are more passive and self-censoring. The students use state anxiety to safeguard themselves against negative evaluation or persecution. It affects especially writing tasks emotionally demanding and self and sensitive. Language proficiency should be able to counteract anxiety effects, but more research is needed to find the threshold that should be able to do it. Uh, so, what the research concludes is what was shown by the results and the discussion made with the writing performances, which is that the students with state anxiety they are more afraid of being judged or being resented by the opinions they take. So they try to hide with it. They use state anxiety as a mechanism to avoid negative evaluation or persecution by the opinions they have. And this in English as a foreign language classes is very debilitative for the students learning. The author also poses some recommendations in the conclusion. For these recommendations are for teachers to help the students. The author recommends some ways to improve your students' writing by lowering their state anxiety. What he says is that emotionally demanding writing tasks should be delayed to later terms in English as a foreign language programs. And situations in which the students are directly criticized should be avoided. Feedback would be better given by describing errors and quickly providing helpful instructions. What the author says here is that if you, as a teacher, we as future teachers, can help lower our students' state anxiety, they should their writing should exponentially improve. So, what he recommends, as in his point of view as a researcher, is that writing tasks as the one he used that are emotionally demanding or touch on sensitive topics should be delayed because in the later terms of the program the students should have a better level of language proficiency to deal with these tasks. They should be more equipped, more able to deal with emotionally demanding tasks. And we always should avoid situations in which we directly criticize the students, such as exposing themselves to the class for no reason. And a teacher, he also says, should never say that something the student is wrong, not giving feedback in a positive way, but giving backlash. We should avoid giving backlash to the students in any way. We should describe their errors without judgment and quickly provide helpful instructions to uh, make the student not afraid of making to help the students to be not afraid of making mistakes and help them improve it. Here is the reference we use, the article Anxiety as it pertains to EFL writing ability and performance by Muhammad Ali Salmani no Dushan. Here are both our contacts of Amanda and me, Gabriel, our emails in case you have any doubts, any question, anything to share. Feel free. Now we go live to the activity. The activity is in forms, and the activity is just some simple questions to help us reflect on what we learn about anxiety and its effects on the students, uh, and how we can apply these informations to our daily lives as a student and as teachers or future teachers.